computer. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So everyone, welcome to our first lesson on Techquitable Futures. Really happy to kind of welcome the new fellows, as well as the mentors who have kind of volunteered at times to kind of help us out in terms of mentoring students. So we're really happy and excited to have everyone here and kind of get going with our very first lesson here. So in terms of topics for today, we'll be kind of covering a few things here. So first, we'll be kind of going over the program overview in terms of why we started this and what we're going to be doing for the course of the summer. And then we'll kind of move on to the core of this lesson, which is going to be the overview of the interview process. So we'll kind of understand, where everyone kind of is in terms of kind of in the motion of going through this interview process. What does it look like? How long the process is going to take. So we'll cover all those details. And then we'll kind of spend the next 5 minutes covering the logistics of this program. So then we can make sure that everyone's on the same page with regards to following the program and also getting, having some expectation about communications. And then we'll also have a Q&A toward the end, so that if you have any questions that remain unanswered, we're also happy to cover them. And then lastly, this for the last 15 minutes of the group, which I think is the most fun part, we'll have a breakout room where each mentor pod, so basically the mentors and fellows will get to meet and greet each other. So yeah, so we'll kind of end our meeting today with the meet and greet part. Please stick around so that so we can get to this part. All right, so now kind of to get started the program overview. So our organization has a mission, and just to kind of give background, so Techquitable Futures is a volunteer-based fellowship program dedicated to making the tech industry more accessible to individuals from all backgrounds. Specifically, we do this by helping students from underrepresented backgrounds, and that kind of includes race, gender, sexuality, education, land their first job in software engineering by pairing them with mentors in industry to receive interview prep and career advice. And why do we start this? Well, I think a lot of us who are already in the tech industry can already kind of attest to this, but as we all know, tech industry is one of the fast growing industries with great pay. You can see you can kind of see the charts here and see that the number of job openings even in the past decade has just grown tremendously. And even compared to all other occupations, the median wage in tech industry is much higher. So I think a lot of us kind of share this belief that a work in tech industry, which is fast and rising industry, is a great place to kind of start one's career and kind of move along with where the direction of the economy is going. But there's a huge but, which is people of underrepresented background are still left out from this great opportunity. And once again, there are kind of stats to kind of back out this claim or this kind of facts. You can see on the figures here on the left that compared to a natural average of all occupation across in the US, people that come, Black or African American background or Hispanic or Latino background or woman background are generally underrepresented in the tech industry. Just approximately speaking, people that come from these underrepresented background only make up about half of what is being represented in the rest of the US occupation. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more room for improvement in the tech industry. And this is, really one of the core reasons why we really want to kind of help bridge this gap in the industry and also help, people who come from this underrepresented background make their first step and then launch a career in this industry. So yeah, so to kind of get this program going, we have 4 program leads. So we'll just do a short introduction, starting with Arnav.
Yeah, sure. Hey, so yeah, my name is Arnav. I'm based in San Francisco. Work for a tech company called Sightline, super small startup. I think from my experience, the last place I worked at had really, really poor diversity. It was 83% Asian males, really bad in a lot of ways. And I think I got 3 hours back from not having to commute daily. So I wanted to put it into doing something better. And so this kind of, I think Kern and Wentel started this, and I thought it was a cool opportunity. So just happy to be here, be a mentor, support, and everyone's on Slack. So feel free to shoot me any Slack messages if you have any questions about anything. Always happy to answer.
Hey everyone, I'm Karan. I work in product ops at LinkedIn. Graduated Harvard 2017, worked at Adobe before coming to LinkedIn. And yeah, as Arnav said, Wentown and I had this idea in the summer about a year ago, where after George Floyd, we were seeing the tech companies respond saying like, hey, we want to put more emphasis on racial equity, but for these large, slow moving institutions, it's tough to follow up your words with action. And so Wentown and I want to take the resources that we've been able to accumulate over the course of our years in school and in work, and try to pay that forward to folks who are equally talented to any of us on this call, but just don't necessarily have the resources just because of where you went to school or like what networks you know. And so we're trying to break that a bit more. And I will pass it off to Miles.
Thanks, Karen. Hey everyone, my name is Miles. I've been a software engineer for about 4 years now, and I am currently working at YouTube on the YouTube music team. And I've been involved with different mentorship programs for a very long time. I've been serving for mentors for programs helping Black students in the Bay Area when I lived there. Been involved with mentorship programs when I moved back to New York over here. And I think particularly I have been navigating spaces my whole life that have both had a lot of access to nice things, but also like have been very poor diversity wise. Like I've often been the only Black person in places I've been computer science wise. So it means a lot to me to take the resources and networks I have and try to help others, be able to get similar things and move forward in their tech careers as well. And I'll pass it off to Wentow.
Sounds good. Thanks, Miles. So once again, my name is Wentel. I'm currently working as a software engineer at this venture capital firm called Signifyer. Let's see. One of the reasons why I'm kind of passionate about this is I also kind of grew up in an immigrant background where no one in my family really worked in this kind of industry before. And I also had like a really tough time getting into this industry despite studying applied math at Harvard because I took a gap year and I just realized, how hard it is to get in this industry, even, with some of the academic background that I had, or even, just like applying to jobs. And this is like, it was an occasion where I realized, man, like what I learned in school is just so different from what I'm being asked and tested on these interviews. So I personally kind of went through like a tough time, kind of getting all the skills and knowledge that I need to kind of like, crack into this industry. And so yeah, that was kind of like the painful experience that I had personally, and also I just want to make sure this kind of experience is much easier with all the knowledge that I have acquired, as well as like all my friends or other mentors in this industry has acquired. So then yeah, we can pay it forward onto you guys, the fellows. So yeah, this is one of my personal aspirations that I had going for this program. And one of the biggest reasons why Karen and I started last summer, and we're really glad to have people like Arnav and Miles join us in this mission too. So even though it's kind of like only doing this second time around, I think we're just really happy to kind of be doing this and kind of like keep going this motion going forward as well. So yeah, that's a little background of the program leads. And in terms of mentors, who are they? Well, this is the kind of answer to that question, which is, so our mentors are current software engineers who have found out about us through direct outreach, workplace referrals, and word of mouth. This is just like a kind of a small representation, but the companies represented in the summer cohort include companies like, Arista, Blend, Chime, Facebook, Google, and all those companies like, in the other row, which is Microsoft, Medium, Salesforce, Sightline, Square. And there's like, many more other companies represented in the summer cohort, just because, we have a network of over 20 plus mentors that are joining us for this cohort. So our hope is that, not only will they kind of like, teach the fellows kind of knowledge and the skills needed to pass interviews, there's also like a lot of knowledge and insight about working at different organizations and working in different products that could be shared. So yeah, so really, yeah, kind of really excited about different types of knowledge that will kind of get shared through this program. Thanks to the mentors, and really, yeah, really mentors. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Yeah, and now like moving on to fellows. So who are basically our target students? Well, the answer to that is we target college juniors and seniors from underrepresented backgrounds attending public university or non-feeder schools to tech industry. So in this cohort, we have 8 schools that are represented, and they are Arizona State University, Bethany Lutheran College, Berkeley College, New York City College of Technology, and there's also Hunter College, Sacramento State, University of California, Santa Cruz, and lastly, University of Massachusetts Lowell. Yeah, so we also have some wide representation schools represented in this some cohort, and just a disclaimer, it's not like we have an official partnership with them. We just had like opportunities to be able to kind of like reach out to students directly at these universities, just asking them if they can kind of like share the post on their computer science clubs. And for some of the schools, we had luck of getting in touch with academic advisor, and they were able to kind of just kind of casually share in an emailing list, which I believe how some of the students found out about the group. But there's no official sponsorship going. It's much or less kind of grassroots kind of thing going here. All right, so now that we kind of like introduced the background of the program leads, the mentors and fellows, I'm gonna kind of go into what we do as a program. So I'm sure you guys kind of seen this pitch on the website, as well as like in the program application, but just kind of reiterate. So for the next 10 weeks, we will be providing group lessons and individual mentorship. So group lesson, which we're kind of currently doing right now, will basically consist of 60 to 90-minute session per week, and it will cover both technical and non-technical topics. And then, this lesson will be led by different teams of mentors each week. So you'll kind of like, be seeing different faces around from like lesson to lesson. So yeah, that way, you don't get tired of just listening to me or, any other one of the program leads. Oh, sorry, just skip the slide there. And then on to the next component, there's also individual mentorships. So this will be our session between the fellow and the 2 mentors that are assigned. And the kind of like the rules behind, or the kind of expectation behind this, is that there will be a 16-minute session per week. 2 mentors that will be assigned to each fellow or student. And this is more or less like free-formed. Fellows, like, feel free to kind of take the charge here and just like let your mentors know what you want to cover. But in the past, kind of popular topics have included things like, reviewing the lesson materials, or just conducting mock interviews, or getting advice for job search, or just, mostly anything that you would like. So, just kind of like, have this conversation with your mentors and see, and have conversation that you think will give you the most help during those times. And then this is a program schedule. So just to kind of go over, so this week we're doing the welcome and interview process. And then the next week, we'll cover the other non-technical topic, which is the resume review and the behavioral rounds. And once we have covered those like non-technical things, we'll kind of move on to the technical topics. So the kind of first lesson would include things like coding rounds and arrays. And then, thankfully we also have a 4th of July holiday break there. So hopefully, everyone has like a fun plan kind of planned out for that weekend. And then once we have that break, we're going to kind of go back into the technical studies. So we'll kind of like continue on with like arrays and strings in week 4. Week 5, we'll cover stacks and queues. Week 6, we'll kind of cover linked list. Week 7, we'll be covering recursion. Week 8, we'll cover sorting and searching. And lastly, this is the hard topic, which is kind of why, it's in the end, we'll be covering trees and graphs. And then once we cover all these technical topics on week 10, which is scheduled on August 23rd, we'll be doing like a final review to kind of go over like everything that we have learned in the group lessons. And this is what you hopefully take away from us. So one, knowledge, and this is knowledge about how to do well in technical interviews and what needs to be done to continue the journey of improvement. And two is support. And this is support for learning program solving skills and going through the challenging process of job interviews. And third is confidence. This is the confidence in being able to pass technical interviews and become a full-time software engineer after going through a program, and also after finishing whatever college degrees or other education path that you're following. And lastly, this is definitely aspirational, but hopefully will happen. This is friendship. It's the friendship with other students and mentors who are all here to kind of like to support your early career goals in becoming true. So yeah, really hope people will have fun here, and also get that aspect from this program as well. All right, and then just moving on to expectation. So this is a 10-week program, and it's fairly intense, but really hope that you do your best to attend every group lessons and you schedule meetings with your mentors. So yeah, please kind of see if you can actually try to do this. And we understand there could be schedule conflict from time to time. So whenever that happens, please email your mentors and also CC techquitable@gmail.com, which is our team email. So that we are aware of your schedule conflict and perhaps try to arrange like a makeup session for you. So all right, so that covers all the program overview, and now we'll move on to the interview process. But just to take a pause here, are there any questions about what we covered so far?
We won't cover bits of like dynamic programming.
So yeah, good question. Dynamic programming, we have actually cut it out from this cohort's curriculum. And one of the reasons is that, this program being short, we really wanted to focus on topics that are more foundational and that has like the likelihood of just like showing up in interviews. I think there are some, relatively speaking, like fewer companies asking new grads like dynamic programming questions. And even though for those companies, could be just some occasions. So yeah, this is like, and then, and then meanwhile, there are like so many other topics such as just basic, for example, like array and string manipulations, or just understanding how to manipulate through a linked list, or how to work with queues and stacks that are more common and could show up in a lot of technical interviews. So we're kind of focusing more of our time on those topics. But yeah, if you're really interested in dynamic programming, you can kind of bring it up with your mentors and see if you can also just try to allocate some of your time to covering those topics. Yeah, but that's a great question.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and we might not necessarily cover it in a group lesson per se, but we can also prepare just a doc with some helpful tips on it as well. And we can send it over to your mentor. I think Crystal is your mentor, so we can work with her too if there's anything we need to help out there.
Any other questions? All right, if not, we'll move on into learning about the interview process. So this is the interview roadmap. And they're kind of 5 phases that, we basically kind of set up a framework thinking about, how that interview roadmap looks like, and there are 5 phases. So phase 1 is the long-term preparations. Honestly, there's just no shortcut or shorter way around this, but this is the phase in which you're kind of building the technical skills and fundamental knowledge by taking CS courses or building projects and doing internships. And we think this can take anywhere from 1 to 4 years. I mean, usually if you're going through a traditional college degree background, you'll be spending 4 years on it. And if you're or college junior or senior, you're only a good way. I know some people, who have already graduated from college or who have decided to kind of skip out on college and wants to kind of like, getting into tech. Some people like, kind of go through like boot camps in order to kind of pick up this knowledge. And even those kind of boot camps would take, some time around like 1 year to kind of prepare this kind of knowledge and skills. So yeah, kind of phase one is this like long-term preparation. And we believe everyone in the fellows is like on their good progress in kind of like doing this. And then the phase two is the short-term preparation. So this is like where you kind of review data structures and algorithms to kind of prepare for technical interviews. And a lot of people also practice solving problems on like websites such as LeetCode or reading books such as Cracking the Coding Interviews. And then they also like the non-technical side, which is like practicing on how you would answer behavior questions. We think like this kind of preparation take anywhere from anywhere around like several months. And one of the kind of goals of Techquitable is to kind of like help you with some of these like short-term preparations, or at least like point you to the right direction, so that you can also kind of continue on this development after after the end of this program as well. And then phase three is job search. So once you feel kind of confident about your problem and like coding skills and want to kind of like take on interviews, this is like where you kind of like start to like look around. Hey, what kind of companies or roles you would like to work in? Honestly, I know like being college students, like there are some like dream companies that you would like to work for. I think the popular kind of companies include places like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, that are kind of like the giants in the tech industry, and this is what people just have heard the most about. But kind of like our recommendation is kind of like, hey, it's good to have those dream companies, but it's also even better in terms of like your own like job prospect to kind of like cast your net wide, and also like look at like other different companies. So this is like also where you kind of build a list and apply for like different open positions using resources such as company websites, job search tools, like LinkedIn, Handshake. It's also a good idea to ask referrals if you have like friends or older classmates that are already working at these companies. And most importantly, if your college is like hosting college career fairs, it's definitely worth like taking a look and seeing what employers are coming to your college and offering different kinds of jobs there. And once again, we think this process would take anywhere around like several months to kind of like go through. So just a heads up. And then phase four is the interviews. So once you apply to jobs and hear back from recruiters, this is like where kind of like your interview process kind of starts like get rolling. So the key action to kind of take here is like, you got to keep good communication with the recruiters. You also got to focus on passing each round by doing kind of like what you have been practicing. And then ideally you want to just like, keep on making other options by continuing to apply to other jobs in the process, and then just following up in case like, the kind of companies that you wanted to get into doesn't pan out, then, there'll be other options that you can still follow and make it as part of the options. And then usually this kind of process could take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. But I understand, things could be like really dynamic or uncertain sometimes, depending on how the economy is doing. So yeah, I mean, even if you don't wrap it up by the end of 6 weeks, and it turns into like a several months long process, don't feel discouraged, because, this is just part of the journey. And yeah, just hopefully by the end of it, there's like some kind of job waiting for you, or you decide that your skills are not, you don't feel like your skills are not up to the par yet. There are also like so many online resources, as well as like in-person instruction. They're just available now. Which is a great thing about like living in 2021, is that just a bunch of like resources have popped up. So yeah, there are also definitely opportunities there to kind of like follow up on your kind of like knowledge and skill development. And lastly, once you kind of like go through the interview process and get offers, this is like where you'll be deciding where you'll be happy to like work at the company and the role that you'll be offered at. And this is like, where you talk to hiring managers, future teammates, or friends working at the company, and see, yeah, if like whatever you're doing will kind of like, will make you excited about working there. And usually companies, I would say for college or recent grad candidates, there's like a more lenient timeline. Like companies could give you like several months to think about it. But for like a full-time candidates, this could be as short as like 1 or 2 weeks in terms of like a turnaround time. So yeah, this is like where you need kind of like, this is where also some of the research that you have done, job search process could also help in kind of giving you the context and the prior knowledge and making those decisions as well. So this is an interview roadmap. As I kind of said, everyone has already been doing like, the phase 1 stage of the things. But here at Techquitable, we'll be really helping you with, phase 2, as well as like, definitely some aspects about phase 3 and phase 4, hopefully. And I guess phase 5 as well, because, if you also want to have like a prior knowledge about, how you should be deciding job offers. I'm sure a lot of mentors have also gone through similar experience. So yeah, feel free to ask the mentors and see how they thought about different job offers that they have received in the past and why they decided to kind of go with the one they ended up taking. So, all right, and then kind of to like dig deeper into these like interviews. So what are different like rounds in the interview process? So, okay, sorry. It seems like I'm getting the notes that I'm getting cut out. So apologize for any kind of signal issue. But yeah, let me know if I should be repeating. Okay, so I got a suggestion that maybe I should stop my video and just focus on the screen share. Okay, so hopefully this is going to work out better, but let me know if the signal is an issue. And I'm definitely happy to like repeat some of the things I have said that's kind of getting cut out. But just kind of getting back into the interview rounds. So there are like 4 common rounds that we have identified. Usually the first round is like resume screen. This is like where you apply to companies with your resume. And you can also expect a follow-up if everything goes well. Or, I guess you can expect a follow-up anyway from a recruiter, whether you pass to the next round. Or sometimes, or like a lot of times, you will just receive this like boring and standard rejection message. But don't get so discouraged. This is just like part of the process. So yeah, you just have to kind of move on and try to like move on to your next target sets of companies when that happens. But like, let's say you get past to the next round, then what's going to happen? Round 2 is usually a recruiter call. This is where you usually have a 30-minute phone call with the recruiter and have a conversation about your background and why you applied, and recruiter will also tell you what the process will look like. So yeah, just really important to kind of leave the impression that you're really interested in this company and this role that you're working for, and yeah, so that so your recruiters are kind of happy to move you on to to the next round. At the same time, maybe there's some conversation or details that your recruiter gives you that makes you realize that you do not want to work for this company or for this role, and that is completely fine. If that happens, you can also like follow up on the email saying that, hey, after this conversation, you realize that this may not be the best role, or maybe this not be the best time to take it, and that is completely fine as well. But let's say that we really are interested in the company, and your recruiter is also happy to move you on. What's going to happen next is like this like 3rd round, which is like usually it's a remote technical round. And this is like where you have like a 60-minute session with a technical interviewer. Most common format is that it gets conducted over the phone or video, and you also be expected to do a coding exercise. So there'll also be like a link to like an online code editor or document where you're kind of expected to write code. It's very similar to the kind of technical exercise that all of you guys have gone through with the interview process with Techquitable. But you can kind of imagine it's much more like extended version of it, And then you also kind of expected to know much broader set of topics. And then here you're expected to go through anywhere from like 1 or 2 remote technical rounds before moving on to the final round. So yeah, so let's say your performance in these like 1 or 2 remote technical rounds is good, then usually you move on to the final round. Before COVID, this was like on-site interview, but I'm sure now that COVID has happened, a lot of companies have like moved to like either like full remote or remote friendly. This might also happen over Zoom as well, or Google Hangout. So this is more like a 1-day event where where you have anywhere from 3 to like 6 interview sessions. Usually one of them will be non-technical interview, like in a casual setting, like such as like lunch. But otherwise, like most other interview sessions are like, how you will be about like coding exercises. And it will also kind of follow the same format as like the remote technical round in the prior round. So, there'll be questions around data structures and algorithms, or sometimes even system design, like, questions asking you things like, hey, how would you go about designing this to-do list, or to just like, calendar, something that, you may have seen in your day-to-day life, but, they want to ask you how you kind of like go about designing it in like a, in terms of like, more like a object design point of perspective. So yeah, these are kind of like the 4 common interview rounds. And then to kind of like dig even deeper into like some of this round. So what really happens in this technical round? So as I mentioned, this technical round is usually 60 minutes. And what happens is, they're usually kind of like 3 like major components. The first component is that usually both the interviewer and the candidate will spend anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes going over introduction. So usually the interviewer will kind of give introduction about themselves and what they do at the company. And they will also ask the candidate or the students about, hey, can you please introduce yourself and your background, to get a more of like a background knowledge about who the candidate is. And then oftentimes they will also ask you certain questions, pointed questions about your past experience. And this is what we kind of like, we'll cover in the behavioral rounds, like preparation. But, they could ask you questions about like, hey, what is like the most challenging project you worked on? And how did you deal with your teammates and things like that? Because, from the interview perspective, they want to make sure that they're hiring someone that will be, pleasant and fun to work with. So those kind of questions will be kind of like, could be covered in like the intro section. And once the intro section is covered, then there's going to be a problem solving section, which is going to make up the majority of this like session. So usually there's like 45 to like 50 minutes allocated to the problem solving. And kind of what happens during this time is that you're expected to solve anywhere from like 1 to technical questions with working code and answers for time and space complexity analysis. If time and space complexity analysis doesn't kind of like, doesn't ring a bell to you, they also know as like a runtime or like, or like a space analysis. So, they want to just ask you, hey, what is a runtime? Well, how much space or memory requirement does this code have? So those are the questions that they could also ask you. And oftentimes, the interviewers also kind of expect you to like, at least have like working solution for like one of the problems that are being asked. So then, yeah, so your interview would go over the problem along with some examples in the beginning. And what you do here is like, you want to take a moment to make sure you really understand the problem. And also it's really good practice to also ask questions, I mean, if there are like anything else like you're not sure about, or if there are anything you want to clarify. Since a lot of times interviewers also just kind of leave things like more open-ended and wants to see how to candidates also just try to gauge or try to get more information out of the interviewer. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions there. And then, you can also take another moment to think about how you would solve the problem. And then once you feel confident, you can like start sharing the thought process but I'm sure there are also times where you feel like, okay, you're not confident. But for those occasions, it's still kind of like good to like start sharing your thoughts so that you kind of like let your interviewer know where you are in your thought process. And if you're stuck with something, then you can like have this conversation with the interviewer about, hey, this is what I'm thinking, but this is the area I'm kind of stumbling on. Then usually your interviewer will kind of try to push it in the right direction, so that you can get back on the right track in terms of like thinking about this problem. And this is also the areas where you kind of could also like describe like, okay, what is going to be the brute force approach, which is going to be the simplest solution to establish like a baseline of solution. But brute force solution, as the name suggests, kind of like means that your solution is not most optimal in terms of like runtime or space. So then you kind of start to kind of hone in okay, how you can go about optimizing it. A lot of times, like to kind of optimize like like a runtime, you could use a hash map or like a lookup table to kind of like just stores like values along while you're kind of going iterating something to kind of like make the runtime much faster. And oftentimes, like instead of like let's say introducing like a nested loop, like you could like also just kind of do that, like fall back on those like helper data structures and like do it in like a linear runtime, or doing like like a log n run, like a n log n runtime that is like much faster than nested loop, for example, which is going to take like in squared runtime. But all those things will kind of get covered more in the later lessons. And yeah, you can also ask your mentors about it. And then I'm also gonna just kind of quickly go through these things here, but you basically you want to write your like proposed solutions, and then you will also want to write test cases and see if your code just runs properly. Don't be don't fret if you see that your code doesn't compile. Usually there's like some like spacing issue, or your like typo that you have introduced in the meantime, so they're usually like easy to fix. And yeah, and usually you want to kind of give confidence that whatever solution that you have in hand is the correct solution to the question that your interviewer is asking. So this kind of process, as you could imagine, it's pretty stressful, and it's going to like make up the most of the time. But hopefully, with enough practice, this is something they will become confident in solving. And once you kind of go over this kind of like a section technical round, usually the last 5 minutes will be spent on Q&A. So this will be a good opportunity to like learn more about the job and also show that you're excited about it. And this is like where you can also like ask questions about the role, company culture, and just like what the day-to-day look like, so that you can have a picture of like, hey, what your life would be like, once you start working there. All right, so now that we kind of like covered the process, we're gonna try to kind of like help you understand the other side of it, which is like how the interviewers usually kind of like evaluate candidates based on the performances. So just a heads up, I'm sure different companies have like different rubrics or different themes, but this is like what we think are the most common themes that's gonna show up in most companies' interview rubrics. So there are 4 main themes. The first theme is like problem solving or analytical skills. So this is like where kind of like the interviewer thinks about, hey, did this candidate think about the problem correctly and was able to kind of like reach it fast and stuff. So, some of the questions that may be asked in the group is like, did the candidate need much help, solving the problem, or how optimal was their solution, and how long did it take for them to like arrive at a solution? So obviously, in terms of like, to kind of like have like a good score in the problem solving skills, you want to be able to kind of like, solve the problem fast, and hopefully your solution is also optimal in terms of both like runtime and space. And ideally, you would also like not get much help from your interviewer as well. And the second theme is the technical knowledge or coding skills. And this is like, some question that could get asked in the rubric is like, was the candidate able to implement a working solution? And that's usually a really important one. Sometimes like I mean, I have also personally gone through this, but you know, I had a solution, but was just didn't have like the last few minutes implemented. And even though you feel like okay, you can get there with like a few more minutes, if the time runs out, then oftentimes you have bad luck. So make sure, yeah, you could have like a working solution. And then there are also some aspects of your code that your interviewer would look for, such as like, you know, whether your code is clean or organized. Different languages have like a different coding convention or standard, but usually there's like some good practices or good convention that are kind of like associated with each coding language. So, so yeah, for example, like, you know, if you're the type of person that likes to name your temp variable as like, you know, random var or something, then obviously that's not gonna like look as good as like someone who is more explicit and intentional about naming their variables, such as, you know, oh, this is like the oldest index, for example. And I'm kind of referencing the oldest index because that's, you know, well, that was a question that was mentioned in the, you know, in this kind of like admission interview. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. And there are also other things like, you know, was the candidate able to handle edge cases? And, you know, all those questions gotta get asked. So yeah, really important to kind of like, you know, have your data structures and algorithm knowledge in hand. And also like, you know, just have gone through, like a lot of practice, having a lot of practice under your belt will really help. Just because like, okay, now like, you know, you have like some, you know, patterns that you can kind of like withdraw like your solution from. And also sometimes, you know, you also expect to like, you know, code out these solutions fast. So even having some muscle memories of like, you know, implementing arrays or like, you know, hash map like really fast really helps here too. So yeah, so that's the second theme. The third theme here is.
Hey, Wentao,
Yep.
one quick thing, since we're running a little over time, do you want to maybe breeze through the last two topics? And then I think the slides after this are just logistics, which student fellows can go over with their mentors. And so
Yep.
we can go to the breakout rooms.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely want to leave time for the intro section. So yeah, so let's just kind of fly through this. Yeah, sorry we're running out of time here, but you know, the kind of the last two themes here is communication and cultural fit and experience. So, you know, this is like where you kind of can, this is like where you like, you know, have have conversation with your interviewer. And you know, you just want to kind of leave a good impression overall. So, all right, just moving on to the next one. So I believe this is the last slide on the interview process, but now you might be thinking, hey, how can I best prepare for this? So there are kind of like a 6 things that we'll recommend here. So first of all, in order to kind of like, you know, get asked for, you know, or you know, have a follow-up from recruiters and like move on to the technical rounds, it's important to have a great resume that highlights your background in an organized format. And we'll basically cover this topic in the next lesson. And make sure, yeah, you will have a kind of great resume to apply to like different jobs by the end of this program. 2, you also want to like review data structures and algos. So you can use so yeah, you can use resources like textbooks and cracking the coding interview. There are also other like websites that we can also recommend too if you're not the type that likes to read books. You know, so that's, yeah, the heads up on that. And then third item is like just like know your big O. Big O is like what is an abbreviation that we like to use for time and space complexity. So it's really important to know those kind of things. And then number 4 is like practice solving problems. And you also see a bunch of these questions from books or like cracking the coding interview. LeetCode is also like a good place to go. You want to like get these practice problems. And then this is like, and the 5th item is like a little hard to do on your own, but you know, you also need to kind of practice sharing the thought process because communication is key. Is super important key in interviews. So make sure you know how to do this. And then lastly, yeah, this will be ideal, but you know, if you can just set up time with your friends or mentors to do mock interviews, that will really help you kind of like, you know, simulate the real interview setting and you know, get you more comfortable being interviewed. All right, moving on to logistics. So group lessons. So group lesson will be held on every Sunday from 1:30 p.m. Eastern time or 10:30 Pacific time. And each lesson is expected to run anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. As I mentioned briefly before, different pairs of mentors will lead each lesson. And then lastly, the slides and recorded lesson will be sent to your email, and it will also be uploaded to the general Slack channel so that you can review over time. And then I'm sure some of you guys have already saw this email and have started responding, but yeah, you should have received your mentor pairing. So yeah, so we're gonna move on to breakout rooms next, but make sure to introduce yourself. And if your mentors are not here, unfortunately, make sure to kind of like follow up on the email thread that we have created for you, so that you can start to kind of like introduce yourself and set up a time to meet with them going forward. Yep.
Cool.
Lastly,
Cool.
yep,
Can you-
Slack we covered this, so I'm gonna just skip this. Oh yeah, and then just one more note on privacy. Once again, this lesson is recorded, so yeah, please be aware, because we're gonna be sharing it with the students in this group, as well as students who are signed up on our mailing list. Sorry, Corinne, do you have something to say?
Oh no, I was just saying, while we have Q&A, do you want to just make me a co-host so I can make the breakout rooms for you guys?
Sure. Sounds good.
Oh yeah, if there are any questions, feel free to fire away and we can talk about that as we set this up. Thank you.
All right, Corinne, I think you're the host now.
This is super weird. There's no breakout rooms enabled.
No one has any questions? Wentai did such a good job.
Hold on, I had one. Sorry. Oh, I guess like where do like personal projects fit in the interview process, or in like your guys' opinion?
That's a really good question. I'm happy to take it. In my experience, it varied a lot by interviewer. It's always nice to have a personal project where you can talk about the technical difficulties of it and like explain your thought process into building something that's really challenging. But like at the same time, like if I'm interviewing someone straight out of college, like I don't mind if you don't have any personal projects. I'll just ask about like a course you liked or a course you took and what you found challenging about it. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing is the technical exercise you face. Like I've had plenty of folks that don't do any personal project, but then absolutely crush it on the technical side. That's really the only thing I'm there to grade. And then vice versa. There'll be a lot of people that have awesome technical projects on the side, but then because they can't answer the problem placed in front of them, I often have to go like no there. So they're good to have, never hurts. But I think in a technical interview process, like at the end of the day, it comes down to like, are you nailing the problems that the interview sets in front of you?
Can I just add that like if you have some really cool projects on your resume, sometimes in the interviews the interviewer will only ask about those projects, and they'll ask like really detailed questions on your like GitHub and go through that code, and that like it makes you look stellar because you probably know a lot about it because you wrote it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Ellie here, I'm one of the new mentors this cohort. If you do have something on your resume, be prepared to ask about it and know it. I've seen a lot of times where people have projects from like a year and a half ago on there, and they, and you ask them things like, oh, that looks cool, but they actually don't remember anything from it. So, if you are having a project on there, make sure that you're like really up to date on it, because anything on there is going to be fair game.
I think that was great advice. I have one more thing to add to the side project bit. At every company I've worked at, we've always done like take-home assignments or take-home like interview things. And so I think if a side project can help you with, moving in a direction where you feel comfortable with a take-home assignment, then it'd be a good thing to do.